Right then, everyone, welcome back to the Daily Trump. A couple of things to bring up for today. Firstly, Fox News have released a poll asking a very simple question: do you want Trump to be re-elected? Yes or no? Well, this is on the right-wing media, Fox News, and the polling didn't go the way in which you might expect it to go. Tweeted by Aaron's got a very clear picture here of what's going on. Do you want Trump to be re-elected? Only 38% yes, 61% no. This is on a right-wing Fox News media channel. So on that basis, if you were to apply that nationwide, that doesn't bode well for Trump. In other words, that makes it like he could lose a landslide in a general election, which is obviously national. Now, some of you will be saying, well, hang on a minute, we've all seen the rallies and the people there and so on. But just to slightly dent your hopes there in that respect, these rallies are often held in very right-wing areas in right-wing states. They're not, what crowd size would you get if we went to swing states where, like Michigan or Pennsylvania, etc. These states that Trump isn't going to, he's going to places like Iowa or Idaho or Texas, as he was in the weekend. He's been to, I think he's got another one in Tennessee coming up, etc. So it's all well and good saying, well, look at the crowds I've drawn in a really, really right wing part of a right wing state, but that won't win you an election. Winning Texas isn't going to win him an election. Winning Iowa is not going to win him an election. He needs to win Pennsylvania. He needs to win Michigan. He needs to win Wisconsin. Ideally, probably needs to win Arizona. He needs to win New Mexico, probably Nevada as well, and so on. So, in reality, this polling from a nationwide perspective doesn't bode well. Another bit of reporting here by Hugo Loud regarding this time the Manhattan District Attorney. Of course, we all know about the Stormy Daniels hush money payments, etc. New Manhattan grand jury not expected to meet Wednesday and won't hear evidence on the Trump hush money case Thursday, per sources familiar, confirming NBC. Unclear about whether there will be a vote on criminal charges this week. Doesn't look promising. Doesn't look like it's likely to be charges this week. What is going on there? Well, again, let's try and put a little bit of debunking out there. There'll be those who are saying, well, perhaps Alvin Bragg is, he's lost his bottle. He's perhaps there's been evidence that's come out and now they're thinking, oh, we don't know if this is a good idea. Unlikely, very unlikely. I think more probable is that they are perhaps preparing to bring in new witnesses. And actually, the longer this goes on, the more of this is happening, the more I'm thinking it's not just about the hush money payments. Perhaps there is more to this. Perhaps actually there is not just because obviously it's not. So you got misdemeanors and you got felonies. Just a clarification on what the difference is. Normally around sentencing guidelines, misdemeanor there's no minimum, maximum. Felony you have a sentencing guideline. So, for example, if it's a felony in this particular case, for falsifying business records to protect yourself from what was another crime, essentially, that comes as a felony, and therefore I think that's got a minimum 1 year jail term up to a maximum of, say, 5 or whatever it is, but there is a minimum term, whereas a misdemeanor, there's no minimum, there's no maximum. And so one of the things that I believe that the Manhattan DA is trying to prove currently is that this is falsifying business records typically is a misdemeanor, unless you have done so in order to prevent another crime from being sought. For example, let's say federal financing or federal campaign financing. And this particular case with Stormy Daniels, the paying Stormy Daniels off was that specifically to prevent information that might sway public opinion and potentially cost votes. Well, that would be campaign financing, because it was financing directly to prevent or to that could have an effect on an outcome of a vote, for example. So, but it could be that perhaps there's more than this. Perhaps this relates to, perhaps this whole thing is led on to larger tax crimes or something like that. We just don't know until the evidence is put forward. We just simply don't know what it's about. But the longer this goes on, the more we get off where we have a special witness on one day and then the grand jury doesn't meet for another week and so on. It all seems to me like there's considerably more to it perhaps than we're being sorted out. But then we've also got some people within or certainly with contact within the Manhattan DA who are saying, oh, you know what, I'm not so sure this is, so we just don't know. All we can do is wait. But the news there is the grand jury are not due to meet again this week, and it looks like there will not be a vote this week regarding the indictment of Donald Trump. Now, another news away from Manhattan, the grand jury, the DC grand jury, which has been overseen by Special Counsel Jack Smith, which are looking at two different investigations. One is the surrounding the January 6th and what happened in terms of the conspiracy and the election fraud and so on and so forth. Mike Pence has been told by a federal judge that he must testify to this grand jury. He did. Mike Pence originally or initially appealed, said that he was covered under the speech and debate clause. That has basically been thrown out. There are some exceptions, but mostly speaking, anything that relates to a potential crime being committed, Pence must answer those questions to a federal grand jury. That's quite a big win for Jack Smith. Unclear at this moment in time whether Mike Pence will appeal it or not. If he does appeal, chances are he'll probably lose the appeal as well. The question is how much does Pence want to follow this up? All it would be delaying rather than preventing, because I think the inevitable is he's going to have to testify anyway. And he may well decide, I'm not Donald Trump. I'm going to go through the process. I'm going to uphold my faith in the Constitution, which, to be fair to Mike Pence, he's always been a very pro-Constitution. The Constitution has been, a judge has ruled in this particular case that the Constitution doesn't favour him not being able to speak to the grand jury in this case, and perhaps he will take that as a normal person and say, okay, fine, I've had my appeal, I've made my voice heard, but you think I should testify, so I'm going to testify. We'll have to wait and see whether or not he appeals it or not. But again, Mike Pence will, as it stands, has to testify to a grand jury about conversations he had with Donald Trump around January the 6th. Another thing in Trump World's Day, this is the aerial photo Trump wacko event that he doesn't want you to see. This was as I mentioned earlier in the video, about the rally in Texas, a right-wing area of Texas, by the way, on Saturday. I won't go into the details on the history of this, but it's basically a 30-year anniversary of a controversial event, shall we call it. We won't go into too much detail here. And as you can see from the pictures on the ground, where there were people everywhere, it looked very full. And then actually from the sky, as you can see, it not as full as it once, or as perhaps it was claimed that it was. As I said, it's just because you've got some pictures of some people in a state. We've got a lot of right-wing media saying, "Oh well, that's we're going to win the election. This is how big we are," and so on. And you look at that and you think, well, a country of 300 million plus, of which, in the last election, over 160 million voted, and that little square there isn't going to win you an election. Now, I'm not saying that's all of these voters, obviously, but you get what I'm saying here. It's all well and good saying, well, in a right-wing area, on a right-wing state, you can draw a few people into an airfield. Doesn't necessarily register to votes nationwide, which is what you need if you're going to win a presidency, because the vote is nationwide, not just in deep red Republican-held areas in Republican states. Just to finish off this video, Trump taxes, as if we hadn't already heard enough about Donald Trump's taxes. My God. Trump on Truth Social this morning. What's interesting about this is Donald Trump tends to truth? Is that what you call it? Truth? He tends to truth something when something happens. So this gives us an idea that he's been given information about his taxes or something by the looks of things, and he's basically gone on a rampage here. It's interesting to see that the IRS make a strange house call. WSJ Wall Street Journal on Matt Taibbi during his house testimony on Twitter, and all sorts of bad government acts. That is not coincidence. It's just plain brazen and stupid, but even more brazen and stupid is the way they have handled me, leaking information, which is illegal. no, your tax returns were made public, and making a deal and then breaking it for strictly political reasons. I had a done deal before running for presidency, and they break it, treated worse than a Tea Party and then for some reason page 2 is above, but the IRS during the 4 years of president, but thought it's inappropriate to do so. Besides, I already had a deal from my presidency, a deal which they chose not to honour, so now I'm demanding the original deal without late changes in the rules and regulations, so that deal would be harder to make. Most people would say that after watching the Biden family take advantage of government, I should have made a deal during my term. To me, conflict. Well, just again, we'll just very quickly point on the truth on that one. Donald Trump appointed his own IRS chiefs, and that IRS chief then announced audits on many of Trump's political rivals, and including people like former FBI director, obviously after the whole Russia scandal or Russia investigation, etc. Anyone who basically crossed Trump somehow ended up with an audit. And also, bearing in mind Trump's tax returns, which will now be made public, shows that actually there was a lot of things that were hidden from public view, and that would obviously also lead to reasons why perhaps they want to revisit Trump's taxes to check if he was paying. And bearing in mind his company has also been found guilty on all counts, I think it was 16, 17 counts in total, of various tax fraud in New York and so on. So clearly the IRS are looking a bit more close and saying, actually, maybe we should take a closer look. But either way, they've obviously come up to Trump, and they've obviously, Trump through his lawyers have obviously been given bad news about the IRS, and now he's taken social media to vent that frustration, which is what Trump does. It's a very Trump thing to do. Anyway, there you go. That is, in a nutshell, what is going on today in Trump world. I hope you'll be back with me soon for the next one. If you enjoy these videos, don't forget to click that like button. I always appreciate it. And don't forget to subscribe as well. I do appreciate your support. Until next one, take care.